Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised.
All right. So welcome back, guys.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Well, hi.
What are you drinking, people?
How is everyone?
Yep, I'm good. Thanks for asking. I'm drinking Pims and
You
Dry.
are good.
Thanks. I'm drinking Pims and Dry because, as you both witnessed last week, I had a little too much pirate juice. And before anyone writes to us to tell us that no one is lobotomized in A Clockwork Orange, I know. I was just a little under the weather and got my films mixed up. And of course, I meant One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Anyway. And you, Paul,
Right.
what are you drinking?
Well, I think like you, I may have had a couple too many last week. It's really interesting for those who aren't doing the podcast with us, but maybe just listening at the end of it. Whilst it might only go for like an hour or so, it can take hours to do it. And we'd never know how long it's going to go for when we start. So by the end of it, things get pretty messy sometimes. So for me today, I've got a lovely little John Gehrig Gamay from the King Valley. So it's quite delicious. It's a red, not quite a lot of taste to it, but you can serve it a little bit chilled. So it's a little bit chilled just for something different.
Gamay on, Mo.
Oh, I like
Gamay
it.
on mole.
Is that my thing to come in with my story? It sounds like Game On Mole was where
Are you drinking it all, Swanny, or are you staying your
No,
standard
not
tidy self?
I'm going to try and stay a bit tidy to start with because it's only very early in the day for me here. So I can at least I can reward myself a little bit later with a drink, I think. But not for the time.
Because we did go to daylight savings during the week, so it's now a 3-hour time difference.
Yeah. So I'm at the back end of the morning. So
yes,
not that I haven't drunk, and I did drink this early last weekend and ended up. How shall I say this? I went to bed before my children. Then my children had to come in to me and say, "I think it's time for us to go to bed. Can you put us to bed?" And I had to say, "Go and put yourselves into bed. Turn your lights off. Leave your doors open, and then I'll come in and I'll give you a kiss goodnight each." Because I was a little bit under the weather after drinking champagne straight for 7 hours. It just makes me a bit toxic, a bit acidic. So it's taken me a few days to recover from that lunch. It happens.
Happens more to some than others, but yes, it certainly happens.
Sounds like we've all had that kind
There's
of week.
nothing quite like a 7-hour lunch, is there?
Or a 5-hour podcast recording
poisoned.
Oh,
yep. Champagne.
Shall we introduce ourselves?
Oh, yes.
Can we?
Yeah, we can. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarkey.
And together
we are
Trial by
Wine.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, we are. Sorry,
I just want to say it so much faster than that.
Well, there was a very
impatient.
slight delay, so we were kind of waiting for you, and you were waiting for us, and that's why it felt so slow. But yes, never mind. Swanny, what have you got for us this week?
Okay, so I have a story, and it's quite long, and there are interesting points along the way that we can discuss. And my biggest issue is how do I reveal the story? Because I know the whole story, I know the bits that are really juicy and which are quite good. But in telling the story, some of those we don't get to a little bit later. And I don't really want to give it all away. So sit with me, stick with me. I'll try and set the scene and I'll take you through. So I'm going to entitle this week's episode For God's Purpose. And to give you a little bit of an insight, we focus on religion, sin, the Bible, and of course, sex. Because
all my favorite topics.
I know. This is where the intersection of religion and sex comes into play. And I think that's where it starts to get a bit interesting.
I'd have to say, Sorry, I was going to say, if you've read the Bible, you'll see that sex and religion intersect a lot. They're always begetting someone.
There's nothing like pouring a bit of sex, a bit of religion, and a bit of crime into the pot and mixing it all up and seeing what happens.
Exactly. And that's pretty much where today's tale will take us. So it's set in the US.
Ooh.
It's not Florida.
Oh.
But I have to say, when you look into this story later, it could very easily have happened in Florida. The people actually look Floridian. It just looks and feels like a Florida story, but it's actually set in California. And it's set in a really small man-made, I'll call it town, called Silver Lakes. And it's in the Mojave Desert. So if you're thinking of California and you can picture LA on the coast and Las Vegas, in the desert, it sits somewhere sort of in between. It's a little speck on the map. And what it was created for is, I think it was actually a town that was pretty much man-made to help with the railroad. So a lot of the people there worked on this railroad that goes obviously from LA probably across the country. And what they did was, on this little dot, they put a man-made lake there. So these people who live there thought that they kind of lived in a little bit of an oasis. They really thought it was quite beautiful. Only about 5,000 people live there. And I think these people probably worked quite hard, but, played quite hard. Everybody knew everybody.
So can I ask, when was the town founded?
I wouldn't have a clue, but I
okay,
it was terribly long ago.
I'm on
But
it.
Is this story okay? But is this story an olden time story or a modern time story? Right.
And the town itself has quite a modern feel. When you picture those places like nearly on canals, where all the houses look the same, it just looked like a suburban development. But from an aerial shot, it's actually quite small. It had, the man-made lake, these sort of kit homes. It wasn't a wealthy place. It was just a place where people went for their job, I'd imagine, but they thought they had quite a nice level of living. Silver Lakes.
You want to know when it was founded?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure.
Great, because if you Google when was Silver Lakes founded, the first thing that comes up is Silver Lake Wikipedia. Silver Lake was founded in 1999 at the height of the late 1990s technology boom.
Oh, wow.
Clearly the wrong Silver Lake. So we'll go on to the one that we're talking about.
Right, because I was going to say, where are the railroad road in that? But okay.
Yeah, I was getting confused very quickly. Anyway, so the real Silver Lake that we are talking about, originally named Ivanhoe in the 1900s by a resident from Scotland. It was built around what was then a city reservoir, which gives the district its name. Silver Lake is named after Herman Silver, a local politician who helped create the reservoir. We could go on a bit more, but I feel like that answers.
I think that covers it. Thank you.
I think that's kind of apt, actually. Now you understand it's built around a reservoir. It's not some gorgeous lake. It is just a purpose-built town, really a dot on the map in the middle of the desert. But yeah, so that's where our scene is set. And our two major players are a lovely young couple called Sabrina and Rob Lemon. Anyway, they were married in about 2000. At some point, they've been somewhere else in California and they arrive in Silver Lake. And that's because Rob has a job with the local railroad company. Okay, so they were married in 2000. They've arrived in Silver Lakes and they've moved into a street called Strawberry Lane.
Oh,
so
idyllic.
Life was pretty good. So Rob is a mechanic with the local railroad company. He'd wanted to be a firefighter, but wasn't. But, really quite liked his job and was very happy to go off to work. And Sabrina, she worked at the local Costco. And she was what you would call a sample girl. So apparently it's a thing in Costco. I wasn't aware of this.
I've been to Costco. I know what a sample girl is. Yep.
You do? Okay.
Yes,
is it like
it's literally a person who gives you samples of food that they make on or with the product they're trying to sell. So if they're selling fry pans, they'll cook something in the fry pan and say, here, have, and it'll be served in this teeny tiny little paper cup or, some such like that.
Yeah.
It's basically you watch people go around and that's how they feed themselves, I think, throughout the day.
I think if I was wanting to sample a fry pan, I wouldn't want to be sampling the food cooked from it. I'd want to be like washing it up or something like that because that's one of the things that annoys me about fry pans.
That might be the feedback you need to give to the sample girl at the time.
Life's a bit different post-COVID with samples. I've noticed that. Anyway, so we have this couple who have two small children. I won't touch on the children again or touch the children again. But they are perceived to be this really lovely couple. They're very popular. He looks like a bit of a tough guy. I think he's heavily tattooed. He's got a bald head, wears those wraparound sunglasses, but he's really nice. The people that he works with think he's great. His mates adore him. And she's what I think middle America might call a hot blonde. She has, bleach blonde hair, those white shiny teeth, quite heavy makeup, sort of tattooed eyebrows, but, thin and athletic and happy-go-lucky. So they are seen as this really in-love couple. They call each other by pet names and, life is good. They work hard, they play hard, and life in Silver Lakes looks pretty perfect from the outside to pretty much everybody. So that's the setting. And well, yes, then they start to make friends with some of the locals. And by about 2008, they are part of what they have coined the Wolfpack. So this tight group of friends, all of them in Silver Lake, all of them sort of working together, partying together, celebrating things. They all have children and they call their children the Cubs. So they kind of are really celebrating the fact that they've got this really tight-knit friendship group. And in going through a lot of information on the case, they truly were inseparable. I could find every Christmas, every birthday, school events, everything. They are all photographed together, consistently for a number of years. They were a really tight-knit group. And I think even other locals who weren't part of the Wolfpack were very aware of the Wolfpack. And I think people from outside looked in and thought it looked like a pretty cool, fun-loving, supportive group of friends who, just adored being with each other.
Who
The
were into
Wolfpack will
religion,
evolve.
crime and sex.
Yes, I'll use the word evolved, and I won't really go into it too much yet, but the Wolfpack does evolve to be perhaps a little bit more than just couples who are friends.
Do they invest
Right.
in anything like a swing at any time?
Quite possibly.
Right.
Quite possibly. I think
Fruit
when
bowl
you're
in the middle of
celebrating
the
your
table.
friendship so much and people are so aware of you as a group of people and the way that you behave in public, perhaps there was something along those lines. But at this point, all we need to know is that the Wolfpack, Sabrina and Rob, are all fabulous friends. And there's one couple in particular who will play a more important role as the story evolves, is a couple called Kelly and Jason. And Kelly is a hairdresser, Jason is a firefighter. And Kelly and Jason very much become the very best friends with Rob and Sabrina Limon.
Do you think Rob was jealous of, I've already forgotten his name, the
other guy who's a
firefighter, because he
Jason.
wanted to be a firefighter?
Yeah.
I have to say categorically no, because Jason and Kelly are at such great length. They go to such great lengths to say how fabulous Rob is. Rob is the greatest guy they've ever met. They're totally enamored with him, to be honest. He's the greatest guy. They say nicest person, greatest guy, best father, best husband, best friend. I mean, they couldn't have been more glowing in the way they spoke of him. And he was at their house all the time. They were at Sabrina and Rob's house all the time. These people were just, huge supporters. They're biggest advocates of each other. And I think that during 2008 and from there onwards, there was a time where they were probably all pretty much in love with each other, and the idea of being such great friends and having young children, young families, the support system. I don't think there are many families in Silver Lakes who have like generations of their family there. You've kind of moved there. So these people start and their friends become their family. So
Is it normal? I mean, have you experienced this? You've traveled a lot, Carla, and have small children.
I have a little bit, but not much to the point where saying I've lived in an expat community where pretty much everybody was from somewhere else and they'd moved there for work or for any other, number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't have old friends, you don't have, your sisters, your aunties, your uncles, your grandparents, and you are very much living in close quarters and socializing often or going to the school run all the time. Yeah, it's just through proximity, I think, and sometimes also seeing each other quite a lot that these friendships start to develop into something not necessarily more, but it's given an energy by It's what's the word I'm after? It's quite
Circumstance.
intensity. Yeah, it's not like you're seeing people like in the real world. I see some friends, I'd be lucky to see if I see them every couple of months or every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But in certain expat communities, you're seeing people every day and you're socializing with them every week, and all of that leads to this feeling of, oh gosh, we're basically family. And you often hear people say that, oh, they're the family that we never had, or they are the family substitute. And I think that's where this started. It isn't where it ends,
right?
But it's certainly where we are at the moment. It's where it started.
Okay.
So we've set the scene. We need to introduce a new character, and we're going to introduce that new character at Costco, because one day while Sabrina is at work doing her sampling, she meets a young firefighter, a young, handsome man who is only 22 years old. And at the time, Sabrina is in her mid-30s. Sabrina meets a chap called Jonathan Hearn. And he simply comes up to her while she's handing out her samples. And after a bit of a chat, asks for her number. They exchange numbers. And I'll cut straight to it. An affair begins.
When they did the training at Costco, surely they said, now you're handing out samples, you're not handing out your number.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what struck me. It wasn't a real challenge for dear old Jonathan to talk to Sabrina and get her number, who this happily married.
Yeah, Rob's amazing. Rob's the nicest person you ever met in your life. What's going on here? Right. But he's not a fireman.
You are the sampled chick. You're not the chick to be sampled.
Yeah, precisely. Yes.
I think that
gap in the training system.
Exactly. So Jonathan meets Sabrina, and I think there's a connection immediately. She's this sort of sexy older woman. And what we find out at this stage is that Jonathan has grown up in a very religious family, so religious, in fact, that to sort of avoid outward sort of interference, they were also, he and his brothers and sisters were homeschooled. So really the first taste of what I would call the outside world was when he went to the fire academy. Do you call it a fire academy?
I mean, what could go wrong? I love the way that people do this. We'll have everyone sheltered in a little bubble, and the minute they have to go out into the real world, this is where all the gold happens, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, except the Amish, they seem to manage okay. Anyway,
but they don't integrate well, is my understanding. Like they very much live that sheltered life and try not to.
Oh no, totally. But they have a year where they're allowed out to live in the real world to decide whether or not they want to remain in the Amish community living like that, or they want to go and.
Did you watch that on MTV?
Yeah. No, I didn't. I'm just
remember there was like a reality program or something called My Amish Life, and it was set on where they go to the city. It was. I have seen it.
I think if you're doing it in a community, though, you can keep it in-house. If you're doing it in a house, like they're going to get out at some point.
Yeah.
And then there's either going to be a massive fight within the family, or there's going to be a fight with the rest of the world. And,
it's going to be a fight somewhere. That's right.
I just don't think it ends well.
Not setting up for good times.
No. So we've got Jonathan and Sabrina have met, unbeknownst to everybody else. Something is happening.
And had an affair.
Yeah, so there's an affair going on, but no one's aware of it. However, one night...
Sorry, Carla, you missed that because you had your head down, but Paul did the great sign for having an affair. The old finger through the other...
The little circle.
I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, little circle with your thumb and your finger, and the other
finger through it. That's right. How do I put it politely? That's right.
Maybe they could have done that in this next scene. So the next time we meet Jonathan is in a bar. So the Wolfpack are out on a night out.
Prowling.
And whilst they're there, Jonathan arrives. But when he arrives, it turns out that Rob and Sabrina's best friends, remember Jason Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
Jason and Kelly know Jonathan because he's a firefighter. Yeah. Remember Jason was a firefighter? They know him. And Kelly approaches Jonathan, starts having a chat. Oh, lovely to see you, Jonathan. Haven't seen him. What's going on? What have you been up to? And she calls out to her dear friend Sabrina and says, Sabrina, come and meet my friend Jonathan. And she says that at that time, Sabrina turns around and gives her what she would call an uneasy and kind of uncomfortable reaction. And I'm thinking, because I love to use it in every episode, Deirdre Chambers. What a coincidence.
Yes, there's always that moment, isn't there?
And there's even a moment apparently where Jonathan is then introduced to Rob. And even Rob turns around and sort of has a slightly uncomfortable reaction. But no one reads anything into it at the time. It's only afterwards. But apparently both Sabrina and Rob had an unusual reaction to meeting Jonathan at this, informal Wolfpack drinks night. So nobody thinks anything of it. However, shortly thereafter, Jonathan gets in touch with Jason, so Rob and Sabrina's best mate. And he starts saying, oh my God, you guys are the greatest, the Wolfpack. Oh my God, the Wolfpack. You guys are the best group of friends. When you hang out next time, let me know. I'd love to pop in and have a drink with you guys. And Jason's like, yeah, sure, no problem. We'd love to see you again, mate. Let you know. End of story. But not for Jonathan. Jonathan then starts to text Jason obsessively, like pretty much straight off the bat. When you're catching up with the Wolfpack, what's happening? I want to see the Wolfpack. So it starts to go on for a number of, I guess, weeks. And Jason didn't see any harm in. He then starts to become suspicious and thinking, why are you hounding me?
Stalker. Yeah.
It basically comes to a point where one day Rob is at Kelly and Jason's house, and dear old Jonathan is saying, I really want to see Rob. I really need to speak to him. And so Jason says, I know something's not right here. I'm going to call him out. So he goes and calls Jonathan and says, Rob's here, but what is going on? He's my mate. What are you doing? What's happening? And he said, oh, I just need to speak to him. I need to speak to him. And I've got to share something. I feel really guilty. So I don't know how people would actually go about doing this, but Jason tells Rob calls Jonathan, tells him that he's having an affair with his wife. Rob comes back in and says to Jason, because we don't actually know what happened on that phone call, and Jason says to him, is everything okay, mate? And he said, yeah, look, to be honest, I already knew. I saw a message on Sabrina's phone a couple of days ago. Something was going on, but it's not happening anymore. So, it's all right. I've spoken to him. It's cool.
But this, yeah, sure. This message that he saw, this was well after they had first met Jonathan at that bar and everyone was uncomfortable.
It's not a massive period of time, but it's not weeks. It's sort of, we know that Sabrina and Jonathan met in 2013. And I'm imagining this is probably late 2013, early 2014. It's not, it's not years
and
later.
So are we correct in assuming that when Rob says to Jason, it's cool that Jonathan is banging my wife, that on a scale of like 1 to 10, 1 being not very cool and 10 being super cool, we're probably closer to the 1?
I would say that he seems very cool with it, to be honest. I think Jonathan's panicked. Jonathan's feeling guilty. So he wants to say to Rob, I've done the wrong thing. Rob seems, to Jason anyway, to be kind of cool with it. He's sort of like, yes, it's being dealt with. We've spoken about it. And for all intent and purpose, they all just seem to move on. Jonathan removes himself.
It won't happen again. Not as in it'll continue to happen, but we're the Wolfpack, and that's just what goes on in our little group.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I think that I mean, something must be going on for them to just be able to park that and go, oh, okay, Rob and Jonathan have spoken. It's what's happened has happened. We move on. And what we hear at this point is that Jonathan then does remove himself. He stops trying to, I guess, harass Jason to become more involved in the Wolfpack. And Rob says,
I feel like there's been a threat made.
Something weird's
absolutely
happening.
No threats made. Totally the opposite. It's
more still weird. It's like Rob just doesn't care.
Yes.
And his wife's been banging someone. And maybe that's the point. Maybe there is a problem with their relationship.
Yeah.
And
maybe Rob likes Jonathan.
No, well, maybe he does, but it was very easy for her.
Correct.
Nice young man, here's my number, off we go. It feels like something behind the scenes of the Wolfpack, particularly this pair, was going on for some time. Yeah.
It's not all love, is it?
No. And I think that's important to note at this point is that he wasn't angry. It did seem to be something that they could just go, oh, okay, let's move on. Jonathan removes himself, the Wolfpack just moves on. So it's sort of like, okay, that was something that happened, but no one's terribly perturbed by, someone having had an affair. And I think that they just go to business as usual. However.
So maybe I did my back during the week, as I was telling you earlier, Swanny. And so I've been struggling for like about a week now. And I got some Panadeine Fort as part of the strategy to manage the pain.
Oh,
and it said take
miss codeine. I miss
and
codeine.
I just didn't take 2. I thought, no, I'm not sure I'm good with this. I'll take 1. So I just took 1. The first time I took 1, I just kind of sat there staring at the TV with not a lot going on. Anyway, yesterday it got really quite bad, so I took 2, and I couldn't react to very much. And I just wonder whether Rob perhaps had a couple of Panadeine Fort before he had the conversation, and so didn't really react, a little bit blasé. But as they wear off, hang on a minute. Yeah,
Anyway.
We haven't resolved it. We've just discussed it, and I'm just plotting from this point on.
Well, this will come as a big surprise to you, but I think it says about a year later, but I don't know if it was that long, but within the next year, Kelly is Jason's wife. She pops into Costco, and Deirdre Chambers, what a coincidence. Who should she see at Costco? Which does seem a little bit odd, frankly, but she runs into Sabrina and Jonathan chatting. So she goes home to her husband, Jason, and he's fuming because remember, Jonathan was they thought he was not quite their friend, but their contact through the fire department. And they were thinking, who would do this to Rob Lamone? Everybody loves Rob, remember? Their best friend, Rob. Jason calls Jonathan and calls him out, and he yells at him and says, stay away from Sabrina. I told you before, these people are our friends. They're married. It's wrong. 38 and tells Jason that he and Sabrina were still friends, yes, but it was a spiritual connection that they had with each other. It wasn't sexual, it was spiritual, and they were sharing prayer time, and that's where their connection was.
I love a good religious excuse.
Jason doesn't care. He says, stay away from her. End of story.
But Rob doesn't care, so what does Jason
Rob's a good guy. Rob's doing good guy things. Rob's just being Mr. Popularity. What would Rob do?
No, he's still popping the Panadeine Fort. He'll come good eventually.
Anyway, so a few months after the threats that Jason's made to Jonathan, they gather and they celebrate best guy in the world, Rob's 38th birthday. And it's all good. They're all together. They're all wolfpacking. That should be a word that means something, and it will a little bit later.
I feel like it conjures up a visual that I'm not sure is correct.
I think it probably is close to correct. We'll get there. We've got to get a little bit further down the track to find out what the Wolfpackers were actually really up to. But anyway, however, on August 17, 2014, just 2 days shy of their 14th wedding anniversary, good guy, best guy, nicest guy in the world, Rob Lamone, is murdered.
Oh, no, not Rob.
What?
Rob is shot dead. So at work, having done some field work, he's gone back on his own to a warehouse around 5 p.m. and he is discovered sometime later by another workman, and he's been shot to death. And it looks like at the time it's a bungled robbery because he's there on the ground dead with 2 bullet holes in him, but the office, which is, associated with the warehouse, has been ransacked. A computer's been stolen and some files have been thrown on the floor. So, yeah, it just looks like it's a robbery, robbery gone wrong. And there we have it.
I was just saying that's a classic robbery scene with files on the floor scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
It's almost like something out of a television show.
Exactly. They've gone to the effort of pulling out a filing cabinet and you go, oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, because that's exactly what thieves go straight for. Yeah.
And I must say, if I was going to rob a warehouse, I'd go straight for the laptop that probably has no valuable information on it.
And I can't get into it anyway because I don't know the passwords.
At a railway yard.
Back all day watching porn and getting paid for it. Like, you're not making money out of that. It's just a ruse.
Exactly. So we're left with an absolutely devastated wife, Sabrina. Sabrina is
absolutely devastated.
In total shock. Has no idea how this has happened, who would have done it.
Does Sabrina know that Rob knew that she was shagging Jonathan?
I believe so. Okay. At this point, it's only through having what Rob has said to Kelly and Jason, because Kelly and Jason say that Rob had said to them, look, I remember I saw the messages on Sabrina's phone, so it's been discussed.
We've spoken, it's been discussed.
Yeah,
right, okay. Right.
Yes, so one has to assume
Sabrina
that
was so devastated she rang Jonathan straight away.
To do some praying.
Yeah, that's right. We need a spiritual moment together.
I'll just get down on my knees and pray.
She was devastated. It says that Sabrina was unable to speak at Rob's memorial service. So she asked her friend, Kelly. So remember Kelly and Jason?
Mm-hmm.
And what Kelly does is Kelly reads a letter out that she is in Sabrina, had written to Rob years before. So it wasn't even actually something she wrote purposely for the funeral.
How did she get her hands on that?
They must have had it already in the house somewhere. It's like,
Good on
let
the
me get an
fans.
old letter I wrote to him. This is a great one.
Oh, right. So she gave
Yeah.
it to Kelly. Kelly
He
just
clearly
didn't
hasn't said
happen
a
to have
nice
it.
word about him in the last 10 years. So let's go back to
But she did put something on Facebook, and what
That's
Sabrina
all right
Lemon
then.
wrote on
Of course.
Facebook, she wrote, Robert showed his
Always
love,
right.
compassion, hardworking skills, and genuine kindness to everyone he met. I will never let Rob's love die or fade out. I will carry it with me wherever I go and remind our children of it daily as they grow. So she had done that, and she was
He's the
comforted by
best
everybody in
sampler in
Wolfpack.
Costco.
Yes. She also was the sole beneficiary of Rob's $300,000 life insurance policy,
Mhm.
but
That's not unusual. Why wouldn't she be?
exactly.
Let me just sample your $300,000 life insurance premium.
Yes. So what we're left with is a grieving wife, a community that is totally rallying around her.
By grieving, do you mean not so grieving, or do we mean grieving?
She appeared to be grieving, I think.
She certainly appeared to be grieving, and
Mm.
nobody had any reason to be suspicious of anybody or anything at this point. They were just trying to find out who would possibly have had a motive or reason to
Kill the best guy in
the
town.
best guy ever. Again, he was the most popular. And the way they've been sort of pictured was, I think a lot of people put Rob and Sabrina on a bit of a pedestal. I think they were sort of the head honchos
Clearly.
within the Wolfpack. Yes.
Yeah.
They were the ones that everybody sort
I
of
feel
aspired
like
to be
Costco
like.
put Sabrina on a pedestal with a bunch of samples.
I think
I
they probably
think it's very
did.
important. And again, we all aspire to different things. But if the heavily tattooed mechanic at the railroad with his Costco sample, wife, it does speak volumes as to sort of the community
Life
of they lived
goals.
in. These people were like very
Salt of the earth.
hardworking.
Salt of the
Exactly.
earth.
Yeah.
Hardworking,
We all
blue
have our
collar.
different.
Yeah.
Correct.
I thought you meant they'd made it.
Well, they
But
had in
by
their
by their
town.
community,
That's
exactly.
right.
Yeah,
they
and that's
had.
important to know that people had, sort of revered them for this outwardly perfect looking and social couple that people sort of wanted to aspire to be like. So in the initial weeks after the shooting, the police are concentrating on some footage that they've seen from, well, I guess it's the car park, really, outside the warehouse. And first of all, they find some footage of a gentleman that looks like an older guy with a limp. He's got a bag, and he looks like he's walking into the area, and then he appears much later at a different point. That lead proves to be fruitless. There is actually a man who has a limp. He's sort of like a local, I'm not sure.
Limpy
what
Joe.
are you laughing at?
I'm
Sorry.
just laughing at this idea of this elderly gentleman with a limp who turns out Limpy Joe is a local character that everyone had forgotten about when they were looking at the CCTV.
In a
wasn't
town of
difficult for them to
5,000
find.
people, Limpy
They found
Joe
him
wouldn't
quite
have done
quickly.
it. Must have
What
been
was-
someone trying to be Limpy Joe.
What was
He
the
was,
guy?
and he wasn't that old. It said he was already known to law enforcement for having been cited for public intoxication.
Yeah, he's the
And
old
his
town
limp and his
drunk.
footprints matched, but he had an alibi that
Yeah,
was
he's the
fine.
town drunk. But can I just ask you, Paul, can you remember what was the name of the Limpy Joe from Aberdeen who saved little baby, whatever her name was,
Oh, yes, on the railway track.
on the railway tracks? It's all about the railway.
Yes.
What's his name?
What was his name?
I
What
can't
was his
remember.
name?
Don't
No, I
know.
can't remember. I
Limpy
can't
Joe.
remember. But
Maybe Limpy Joe travels a lot.
I'm,
Anyway.
I'm just a little bit traumatized by something you just said, Swanny, about
Yes.
how he was known to the police for public intoxication.
Why'd you
Like-
have that record?
Not only do I have that, most people who go out with me in public have that. I'm shocked that that's actually something that you can have a record for. You can have a reputation for, but Jesus, like,
Oh,
Not
gosh.
in Indigo Valley. Having visited you, no.
it's
No one's
certainly
getting
a
booked.
reputation.
That potential suspect and has an alibi and it's sorted out. Someone else, a gunsmith, calls in and says
What was
somebody's.
what was his alibi? Was it that he was publicly drunk, or was it
I read that it was with his parents, but I mean, I don't.
that's
I
not an
didn't.
alibi?
Well, that's what I would have thought. But anyway, they were able to sort of.
He left on
That's it.
Tuesday. He wouldn't have been able to make it back by Saturday because he limped home.
And he wasn't that old, as it turned out.
Well, that explains the
Oh.
parents. I'm like, how old are Limpy Joe's parents? Because I'm picturing like a, 60-year-old man limping around. Anyway.
I'm picturing him like Kaiser Sose. limps away and then starts walking just fine.
Perfectly. Yep.
Hold on to that thought.
Ooh.
They also had another lead where a gunsmith had contacted where somebody had had a firing pin changed, but it didn't sort out either because it didn't match the murder weapon. So the police start broadening their search and they find some footage from a business that's not directly near the railway yard, but you'd have to drive past to get in. And what they do is they see every vehicle that goes past and they take a screenshot and they start asking local businesses, who is this? Do you know this person? Would they have reason to be here? And they can actually, there wasn't a lot of traffic because it was quite remote. They could give reason to every vehicle bar one. So there was one vehicle which was actually a motorcycle. And then they become quite interested and they start then looking at other footage from other gas stations and whatever else, trying to put this motorcycle in other places. And they find footage of this motorcycle and a man walking in to getting a drink inside what's it called? The service station.
A shop.
And him looking up, seeing a cameras on him, reacting in a sort of, trying to cover his face. And that's all they've got to work with. But it's something.
Like this, trying to cover his face.
Don't look at me.
But having said that, what this man was dressed in was not what the person was dressed in on the motorcycle. So there'd been a little outfit change.
Clown
So
suit.
they start to build this picture of perhaps somebody who knows what they're doing. And
A
French
hitman.
maid.
A hitman.
well, I wouldn't say that much, but I would say that somebody who is prepared for the crime they're all
I
about
was
to
going
commit.
fancy dress. There's nothing like being murdered by someone in fancy dress, I'm sure.
Yeah, could you imagine?
I'm not sure about a French maid. I mean, the clown is terrifying, so fine. But
Well,
the
there's
French
that
maid's
whole
a bit
thing
odd.
from Kill Bill with, the schoolgirl, go with a yo-yo of death kind of thing. So there's, yeah.
Okay. Things get a little bit interesting now. So we're 12 days after Rob's murder. Okay.
Oh,
So
it's going quite quickly then, isn't it?
yeah. And we're the Wolfpack, right? So we're Sabrina. We don't know of any prime suspects yet. It's all a little bit, everybody that they've looked
There's
into.
no unusual behaviour here.
No, not at all. Not at all. But
Well, not unusual by their standards.
It's just at Costco that the weird stuff happens.
That's right.
however, 12 days later, Jason receives a very strange phone call from Jonathan. He wants to meet with Jason.
No, I was
face
about to
to
say
face.
from Jonathan.
Jason wants to meet face to face with Kelly and Jason.
No, Jonathan wants to meet face to face.
Sorry,
with Kelly and
Jonathan wants to
Jason.
meet face to face with Jason and
Kelly
Kelly.
wants to meet face to face with Jason and Jonathan. That's all
Kelly
He
it
can
and
is.
Sabrina.
apologize. He wants to apologize. He says that he needs to get it right with God. He says that his religion is the foundation of his life and that he needs to clear his conscience.
What religion is he?
Well, I know that he's Christian, but I don't know anything more than that. And I don't really want to know anything more than that
Okay.
because I think I don't want to sort of upset any particular.
No, that's all right.
It's kind of, he's just a religious person, but he's Christian.
As long as he's trying to make it right with God, then everything's fine.
If you're a Catholic, you shouldn't do these things in the first place. So making it right with God is fine. Being sorry is
If
fine.
you're an agnostic, you just look at that as an excuse to say, come on, mate,
As long
get
as
your
you feel
shit
sorry.
together.
As long as you
So
say
he's-
sorry later, it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. I
So
did it,
he's
but
let-
I'm
oh,
not
sorry.
going to make it right with God, so that's fine. Stop your
That's how you do
whinging.
it. That's how you get away with everything. So Jonathan's called and left this message for Jason and Kelly on the 2-week anniversary of his death. And then 2 days after that, so again, we're talking 2 weeks nearly, Jonathan calls upon Sabrina. So he turns up at her house with a massive bouquet of flowers and this note that he gives her that he's saying how he only wishes that he could have been like Rob and that, Rob was a wonderful man and just really trying to appeal to Sabrina and say, I'm here to support you. I cannot believe this has happened to you, but I'm here for you. Now, Kelly goes to visit Sabrina because at this point, they're all still part of the Wolfpack, still wonderful friends.
Did Kelly and Jason meet Jonathan, or is that still in the
No,
plan?
not yet. They haven't met Jonathan yet.
Aha. Okay.
So that call has been made, but they haven't met up with him. And they're just trying to look after Sabrina. They're totally, rallying around her. And they're really suspicious of Jonathan. They're thinking, oh my God, this guy's a dick. He's going to try and crack onto our friend kind of thing. Kelly is over at Sabrina's house after she's received the flowers and the letter. And Sabrina shows her the letter and says, oh my God, how sweet is this? And Kelly questions her friend and says, don't you find that that's really strange? I think it's really inappropriate, And she said, no, Jonathan's not like that. He's just such a sweet, God-fearing, good person. He wouldn't do that. No, you've read it all wrong. This is just Jonathan, caring for me. But Jason and Kelly do not find this it doesn't sit quite so comfortably with them. So at this point, Jason calls the police and says, look, I'm not sure, but Rob was just the greatest mate of ours. And, you know, we adore Sabrina. We think that perhaps you need to look into Jonathan.
It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
It's all a bit weird. Yeah.
Jason says that they had an affair. He tells the police that Sabrina and Jonathan had an affair. And what the detective does.
Well, we'll find out soon enough if he's a defective detective or a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the detective downplays Jonathan's potential role.
A defective detective.
The defective detective. Oh, he's like, oh, no, I don't know about that. I think you can relax. Because they're already investigating him. He's already on their radar, right?
Right.
And he doesn't quite say he's harmless, but he suggests as much because he doesn't want anyone to sort of be onto the fact that Jonathan is being looked at behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's like when they interview people and they're like, oh, you know, we just want to know because we want to, you know, clear you out of our investigation. And the whole time they're absolutely sure that that's their prime suspect, but they're doing the whole, don't worry, mate.
Jonathan is assisting with the investigation.
Yes.
Exactly. So
Jonathan
Jason and Kelly question their sort of thinking. They think, oh, maybe the detective was right. But they did still think, you know, look, maybe it's just Jonathan. He wants to make a move on Sabrina now that she's free from, well,
free from Rob.
But yeah, free is probably not the right word, but nothing more
available. Now she's available.
Free for all.
Yeah.
Young and single again.
Up for samples.
So Jason then goes to see Sabrina and he just sort of says, you know, I really want you to look out for Jonathan. I don't think he's good for you and I think you should stay away from him. But Sabrina blew it off, saying that she believed everybody was brought into her life.
Jason or Jonathan?
Jonathan.
She already blew Jonathan off. Now she's telling Jason to go away.
Right. So in the background, let's go back to the defective detective. In truth, he was already investigating, you know, his suspect, who was Jonathan, even before he'd received the phone call from Jason. But of course, that further helped his theory. And what the detectives had already uncovered was that the open relationship between Rob and Sabrina, the partner swaps, the sex parties during their investigation had already come to bear.
Bingo, bango.
Yeah. So this perfect couple, this perfect group of friends,
everyone loved them.
They were Wolfpacking.
Literally.
They were packing on each other.
Exactly. So the detectives were trying to pull apart exactly who was seeing each other, who had open relationships, who knew about which affairs. It was just a writhing pack of snakes all over each other. Really.
Writhing. I like that language.
I feel like a contact tracer could have unpacked that a whole lot quicker than a defective detective.
I don't know. There's a lot of contact.
He could have been a defective detective and really got to that same conclusion, I think.
There's a lot of contact.
I'm seeing Indiana Jones and the snake pit.
Oh, yeah.
All of that. It's not a wolf pack, it's a snake.
Well, it is according to Carla. She's brought the whole biblical serpent into the story for us with that description.
So what they had on Jonathan at this point was that they knew he owned the type of gun. It's kind of pretty obvious, really. I don't know why they didn't do more at that point, but a gun that was used.
They knew he owned a type of gun.
Yeah.
Like that's a dead giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, he'd have a gun registered to him.
Yeah, but he had a number of guns, but one of them matched. Yeah.
But, you know, to your point in earlier episodes, Paul, guns, they're fun. It's America. It's fine. Everyone's got one.
Exactly. But it is a little bit like that. I don't know when you ever read these other stories. It's like if it happened in Australia and they found out someone had a gun, you'd be like, oh my God, they must be like the prime suspect. But so many people have guns. That's not the first point of, or the first thing you deduce and go, well, it must be them. It's actually, well, that might help, but it's not as obvious as it would be if it happened here.
I understand that bit, but I feel like if you're a detective, defective or otherwise, in a town of 5,000 people, and you're looking for a certain gun that murdered somebody, and a person who is literally having an affair with the person who died has the same gun, you might just not leave them on the periphery. You might kind of get them in and actually talk to them about that gun pretty quickly.
They probably don't start with all the guns with the 5,000. They start with who's been shagging the missus. Now let's look at his gun.
Yeah.
I just said, when Carla said what they had on him is they had the gun, I'm like, well, that would I didn't expect
You
it
would
to
have
be
thought that would be the end of the story, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
But no.
yeah.
Well, pretty
So-
much God, is
Yeah.
there more?
Absolutely. So just
Of
park
course
that for a minute.
there
So
is.
that's one of the things that they think that they potentially have on him. Then they start to investigate the motorcycle. And guess what? He also has
He's got this-
the same style of Yamaha motorcycle. But
Hmm.
it did look slightly different. But again, so these two things are helping. And what they basically do with this is it allows them to secure a warrant for his phone records. And that's what they really want.
Right.
So the investigators were able to see thousands of texts and calls from Jonathan to Sabrina,
yeah.
but they had stopped 4 months before the murder.
So are
So-
they trying to determine whether she had anything to do with it?
Yes.
So they're pretty sure he did it.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
it
and now
sounds
it's
like
just
that, doesn't it?
Things
Now
are
let's
certainly
just
adding up for
connect.
him, but at this point, they're trying to work out what was really happening because all of them were so intertwined.
Yeah.
But what role did she play in it? Did she play a role in it? And so this is why it's really important to find out the communication between the two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we see
So
here
we're
that,
then going with it's so obvious that he did it, but
Yeah.
how?
but what role did she play?
Yeah, right. Okay, now I
We'll get her
understand much
too.
better.
Now we're trying to get
Exactly.
her too. Yeah.
So we
Thank you.
find out that 4 months prior to the murder, they stopped communicating. So initially they think, oh, well, gosh, I guess the affair ended there. But what they then realized pretty much straight away, Jonathan started sending the same amount of texts and calls to another number the day after stopping texting Sabrina.
We're smart, these guys. They're smart.
Yes. A search of this number showed it was a
Deirdre
prepaid
Chambers.
burner phone.
What
What
a
a coincidence.
Coincidence.
Yeah, a burner phone.
A burner phone. Oh, gosh. On the
A
day of the
sampler
murder.
phone. It's a sampler phone.
Oh, gosh.
Did she get it from Costco?
I give it
She
to all
probably
my
did.
clients in Costco.
Get your burner phone from Costco now.
On the day of the
Sample
murder,
away.
Jonathan didn't use his
So-
phone at all,
Oh.
and it didn't ping on any of the towers near the warehouse. Police found it strange that Jonathan's phone was silent for such a large chunk of time on any day because he was constantly on it, constantly messaging her. So a request was made for the prepaid phone location, and shock horror, it was coming directly from the Lamont house. So it was clearly Sabrina using it. Shock.
Oh, what? No, I did not see that coming.
Not for a second.
The messages between Jonathan and the prepaid phone were clearly a romantically involved couple. They often spoke of God and God's purpose for them. This was enough for the detectives to get a wiretap on the phone.
This is why I love religion.
Yeah.
It's just the best.
And
I
this
don't
is
have a
what,
problem. I don't have a problem with religion. You and I will argue till the cows come home about people's choices to believe what they want.
I said I love it. Don't take it as a negative.
but
I
but
really
I
love
don't think people doing really bad shit in the name of religion is good in any way.
So what this allows the detective to do is he starts to, and I've never heard of this before, but I love it. It's called, he was able to tickle the wire. And what you do when you tickle the wire.
Please
you-
explain.
What?
By tickling the wire, you tell the people that you're investigating something that you want them to think or
They'll
believe
repeat. Yeah,
that they
they'll
will
repeat.
then use or right. So
Very
what they would do is
manipulative.
he would leave a voicemail for Sabrina, or the detective was also in touch with Sabrina. Obviously, he was talking to her because remember, she's a grieving wife trying to find out who killed her husband.
Yes.
He's not so defective after all, is he?
No, he's probably quite good.
This guy.
He's a sneaky
He's-
little detective.
He's
To be
a
fair,
Shit,
Like,
yeah.
she did accidentally say defective instead of detective,
Yes.
and we
No,
just
but-
kept
but I was
going
willing
on
to
it.
go with it for a little bit. But
So
No,
what he
he's a
would
good
do is
one.
he'd
He's a
tell
good
her
one.
something, and then they would then listen to the phone call that would transpire between Sabrina
Yes.
and Jonathan. One of the examples would be, so one of them, he said he called her and said, right, well, we've got this shot of a motorcycle. They'd say, do you know anyone? No, nothing's coming to mind. She would hang up. She'd call Jonathan immediately. The detective would be
away.
there waiting. And she'd be like, oh, they found a call. In that call, they would then pray together before
Sorry, I
she then
shouldn't
called
laugh.
the officer back. So there's obviously this dialogue between Sabrina and Jonathan, who are saying they're in love. They're praying to God for
To get away with it?
guidance, wisdom. But at no point do they ever talk about actually murdering,
the
having murdered
detective
Rob. They don't
down.
talk about that at all. They
Right.
just always talk about what would God give us guidance, help us, let's pray.
Yeah, yeah.
I
They
love
should have
you.
prayed to
wanna be
God
with you.
before they decided to murder someone, not after.
Yeah. So he's constantly tickling the wire and setting them up. there was another point where they said to her, which was a total lie, that they thought they had some
Stop it.
DNA.
You didn't see what Paul just did.
Oh, what is the mother these?
Do it again. I was close.
Tickle the wire. Very visual. So over the next few days, the couple would continue to talk about sin and how good God was. They once spoke in length about the Old Testament story of David and Bathsheba and how it applies to them. And I think this is where Jonathan and his religious, I don't know if the word I'm after is not necessarily his
Zealotry?
understanding. Perhaps, yeah, he really starts to dig deep, and he becomes more and more, not to say more and more religious, because I think throughout the entire time that has been sort of the hallmark of his relationship with Sabrina, is he's always referring to God in the Bible. They do have a spiritual connection, and everything he does or doesn't do is he has a reason that's based on the Bible. So he's talking
I feel like if you're not religious and you're just like Bonnie and Clyde, for instance, you know, they had a connection, maybe wasn't spiritual, excellent visual, yes.
It was
I
sexual,
agree.
I believe. Mm.
But I just think, like, if you're not religious, you still have the same connections. They're just not spiritual. And therefore, are they better or worse? Or can we just go cut the crap with your religious rubbish, you criminals, and stop dragging religious people down and stop trying to justify your poor behaviour through something else?
But I'm not sure Carla's saying that they're justifying their actions with God.
I don't think Carl is saying that, but I'm picking up on that when they say, oh, no, we had a spiritual connection. Like,
they're definitely using it to their advantage. Absolutely. I think that
just horrid people.
I find it, and we'll come to this time and time again on this story, is I find that when people choose to look at, you know, like I'll tell you, like I'll let you know this reference first. So he refers to himself at one point, he sees himself as like this sort of King David character. It says, Samuel, I don't even know how to say that. Does it say one point? It tells a story of King David seeing a woman on her rooftop and sending his men to find out who she is. They tell him her name is Bathsheba and that she is married. The king calls for her to come to his palace and they begin an affair. When she becomes pregnant, he has her husband Uriah brought back from war to sleep with her to hide the sin of adultery. When Uriah refuses to sleep with Bathsheba, the king then orders Uriah to be put on the war's front line, where of course he dies. Eventually the king marries her. So I think that Jonathan sees that there was something he had to do so that he could be with his Bathsheba, who is clearly Sabrina. So I
feel like the Bible tells you those stories so that you learn from them and don't do them again. Not so that you can use them to justify how close to God you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think, I mean, that's all First Testament stuff. And let's face it, it's not necessarily something that you want to be taking too literally.
It's not factual.
But it's true. You'll find that these people tend to cherry pick. So
it's difficult to say if it's factual or not, Paul, because I wasn't around 2,000-3,000 years ago when it was written.
When you're having sex with your best friends, and I mean best friends, so man and wife, you know, when you're all writhing around together and doing whatever else, you can choose to turn a blind eye to whatever you want. But then when it's such, oh gosh, that murder we committed, perhaps we better, find a Bible reference to seek forgiveness there. So it's called cherry picking at best.
Can I ask, do you think Jonathan knew that Rob and Sabrina had an open relationship? And that she obviously had probably, and so had Rob, slept with lots of other people in the Wolfpack. Did he know all of that?
Yes,
or he thought this was... Okay.
Yes, he did. But it'll come to play later that she kind of used that and said that she wasn't that it was all Rob's idea, and that, he felt like she had been
coerced. She feels like she's,
and he was saying
or she's suggesting she's been pimped.
You know how at the start of this you described Sabrina, and I was nearly going to say at the time, but I didn't. But do you remember that song from the 80s called Boys, Boys, Boys by Sabrina?
Yes,
and it was somebody in a bikini.
I'm looking for a good time.
That's the visual I just can't get out of my head at this moment. There's just her sampling in her bikini at Costco.
Boys. Have my samples at Costco.
Yes, I don't think she was quite so innocent. Yeah. So, but at this point, the police are now confident they've got enough to go on for both Sabrina and Rob. So they go to their friends to talk openly with them about the fact that they're investigating Jonathan. And at that point,
talk openly as opposed to other things they do openly.
Well, they're now saying, look, we think Sabrina's involved, because remember, none of them thought she was. Jason says absolutely not. He'd bet his life that Sabrina wasn't involved. But his wife, Kelly, she goes, oh, yeah, I can totally believe Sabrina's involved. So that couple are like, hang on. So remember, all 4 of them were sleeping together and then the wider Wolfpack. But I think perhaps Kelly and Rob maybe had a deeper connection than...
Was it religious?
Yeah, certainly not religious, just a deep connection. Yes.
Balls deep connection.
Balls deep connection.
Just remind me to ask later, but when you say that Jason would put his life on it, that she wasn't
Sabrina
involved.
wasn't involved. He believed she was innocent at that point.
When we get to the end and we find out what's happened, can you remind me to ask if he's still alive?
Yes, I shall do. So they've now approached the Wolfpack, or, the group of friends, and said, look, it's not quite right. We think Sabrina's involved too. They've said, no, I don't think so. And they're getting ready to arrest Sabrina and Jonathan. And so leading up to that, they're listening in on a phone call and they think, let's just see how they bite. So they send a photograph just of the motorcycle and they send with a message with it to Sabrina saying, we think we're going to be able to identify this bike. So she is talking to him as this message comes through and they start saying, oh my goodness, I think this is not good. She said, they've got this image of this guy on this motorcycle. So they don't say we did it. It's just them starting to pray.
But I don't feel they're smart enough to recognise they're being tapped or anything like that.
She does at this point.
They're wise.
Oh, she does.
This is the very last call. And Sabrina says she thinks she hears a clicking sound and believes the police are tapping their phone. At that point, the couple then starts saying their goodbyes as if they will never speak to each other ever again. And sure enough, 2 days later, on November 18, 2014, Sabrina Lemon and Jonathan Hearn are arrested for the murder of Rob Lemon. However, after interrogating the 2 suspects, the DA filed murder charges against Jonathan, but let Sabrina go, citing not enough evidence. In late November, Jonathan pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder and was held for trial. So Sabrina, in all of the conversations that they'd ever had, she never said that she knew about anything premeditated or that Jonathan. They never.
There's literally no evidence that said that they can pin on her to say.
No, correct.
She's admitted that she's done it. That's right.
Whereas
she's smart. She's smarter than
the average cookie.
She appeared.
Yes.
Well, no, she's smarter than I think I'd assumed because of her. I don't know.
Yes,
maybe
exactly.
I shouldn't have said a sample lady at Costco couldn't mastermind.
No, but that's what they thought.
This.
And it comes up a few times, which is he was considered to be quite intelligent and religious and aware, whereas they sort of posted her as being, she's just this sort of blue collar.
I don't know nothing about birth and babies.
That's right. I don't know nothing about birth and babies or killing my husband.
Yeah. So Sabrina's a free woman, but really not free at all. So she's basically a prisoner in her own home because the whole community has turned against her. They are now convinced that she was involved.
Good.
And her kids are harassed at school, etc. So she basically has to up sticks and she moves out of the area to another town 100 kilometres away, which kind of neither here nor there, but she's no longer.
Start again.
Yeah. Then we have to
my own little wolf pack in another community.
Well, I don't know anything about her time there, but I would hope that she was sort of a little bit better behaved, but probably not. So although it only took 3 months from the time that Rob was murdered to the arrest of Jonathan, it would take 2 years before the DA's office was ready to bring the case to court. And what do you know? 2 weeks before that trial was about to start, the prosecutors get a phone call from Jonathan, and Jonathan's ready to talk. So things start to change now.
Is this a plea deal moment?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because his love for Sabrina wasn't being reciprocated like it used to be.
I just think the American legal system's so different to ours that
I'm not getting the same number of samples at Costco as I used to.
Exactly.
I'm ready to talk.
Well, I'm not getting any samples and she's not talking to me anymore and it's been 18 months and my lawyers are telling me I'll probably, where are we? Nevada?
California.
So I don't think they have the death penalty, but it'll be a life sentence.
Correct. So the
and
difference is
that doesn't
everything.
sound like a great idea now that I'm not on the phone to this woman every day who's made me feel like it was a good thing to do.
So he's basically come to the party and said, look, I pulled the trigger, but I didn't plan it. She did.
Did he actually use those words? Because that's very cold.
I think he did.
That's
Jonathan
also an
said
admission.
that it was Sabrina who wanted Rob dead. And this is where it comes back again into being a religious kind of well, not motive, but excuse, I would say. Well, she was saying to Jonathan, look, divorce is not an option. I can't divorce Rob. I want to be with you.
I knew that's where you were
going. Would not
going.
accept it. Yeah.
I knew that's where you're going to go with this. And I'm sorry, thou shalt not kill. I don't care whether you call yourself a
till death do us part.
Catholic.
I can't leave him. I can kill him.
No, you can't kill him.
Don't call me that.
So,
which is the greatest sin? Which is the greatest sin, divorce or murder?
I'm not religious, so I don't believe in sin.
Murder. Murder is the greatest sin.
So I can't answer that. I can.
However, I am, and therefore I shall tell you it is murder.
I'm with you on that one, Schmitty.
Thank you.
But she also made the claim that she thought that if she got divorced, she'd be totally ostracized by the wider community, and she still cared deeply about the Wolfpack. And she said that.
Whereas if I murder my husband, no one will care.
Correct. It's all fine. So she didn't want to be shunned if she was divorced. She
if
still
I
wanted
get
to be
someone
friends.
else, if I get someone else to kill my husband and make it look like it wasn't me, and get away with it, then I won't be shunned. She's not very smart on this one. Yeah, but I mean, I'm quite impressed with her ability to check herself through all of those conversations and that where she never once implicated herself.
No,
she was,
not once.
That was quite.
And there were thousands, remember, thousands of phone calls. And they were listening to a lot of it in real time after the murder. They were on the phone listening. He said it was hundreds and hundreds of hours that he listened to them talking. She never once gave it up.
Not a slip there. And yet couldn't quite mastermind this enough to get someone who was unrelated to her and the Wolfpack or anyone to kill her husband.
Correct. So the DA still didn't have any concrete proof against Sabrina because the wiretaps, they could prove that they were having an affair, but they couldn't prove anything else. They couldn't prove, sorry. And even that didn't really matter because they were in an open marriage. So it was all said that there was no crime there. But somehow the DA decided that Jonathan testifying.
He thought?
Yeah, see, here's another cracker. You want to talk about what God thinks. He's not really that keen on adultery. So, adultery's fine in this relationship, but divorce isn't. But murder's okay. I mean, come on.
So they gave Jonathan a plea agreement and arrested Sabrina on conspiracy to commit murder.
Yeah.
Until that time, Jonathan's family had thought that he was falsely accused because, of course, they were the religious zealots as well who were, totally, they just couldn't believe that. And they were shocked
bless
to hear that their son had admitted to murdering Rob. So on January 9, we're now in 2017, Jonathan pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. He was given a sentence of 25 years, 4 months with a chance of early parole. So based on his age, he'll be out of jail before he's 50. He was wise to come forward and implicate
Sorry, how long was he given?
25 years, 4 months, of which he'd already served, I think, 3 or something by the time he'd even been.
Oh, a long time, isn't it? That's
voluntary manslaughter. It's like I kind of half killed you on purpose because I volunteered to manslaughter you.
By the time I get released, I'll have been in jail for more than I've been out of jail. Ouch.
It's not worth it.
Now, when Sabrina goes to court, it becomes.
Can I just interrupt for a sec?
Yeah.
I just had a throwback to last week's episode, Magic Pussy.
It was actually the Catherine Knight.
Was it the week before?
Yeah, it was Catherine Knight, but I had the same thought and I didn't want to raise it.
Oh, dear God, I really hope it wasn't last week's because they were all like dolls and young girls last week.
No, there was no magic pussy in last week. That was the Russian doll bloke.
Sorry to accuse you of that, Carla.
I didn't want to say it. I was thinking it though. I was thinking
in aisle 3, or you can sample my magic pussy at home. Like, what?
Whenever
Here's my number.
Yes.
So when she goes to court, all her friends turned up, but not to support her. They'd all turned on her and they were just super critical. And they were all like, oh my God, she would hate this. She used to look after herself and she can't have her hair dyed and she hasn't got her eyebrows done and she hasn't got her makeup on. They had just turned into, like the Wolfpack had turned.
Into mean girls. You can't sit here.
The courtroom was absolutely packed. And then the local community and also other places, I don't know where Bakersfield is, but it must be like the bigger town where the news.
I've been to Bakersfield.
Have you?
Really?
Where is it?
Yeah, it's on the way back from Las Vegas.
That'd be right. So I think that must have been where the court was, and it's certainly where the TV crews, because the lure, I think, of sex, religion, murder, everybody was watching it, and they actually live streamed it. I don't know if you call it that. Do you call it live streaming if it's being fed from the courtroom? So people were watching hours and hours of evidence each day. It just became a huge thing. Everyone loved it. So this is September 2017.
And they all turned into Regina George.
Kind of. And Jonathan was the prosecutor's star witness. However, of course, some people did question his testimony because they were saying, you know, he's only going to say it to save his own life and make sure that he's not in jail so long. So obviously there was that argument. But Jonathan took the witness stand for 7 days, and he went into great detail. 7 days. He started, you know, starting back with how they'd met at Costco, meeting the Wolfpack, the affair, the parties they attended. And this is quite interesting. So Jonathan painted Sabrina as an irresistible older woman, magic pussy, magic pussy, magic pussy, that he couldn't help but fall in love with.
I'm so proud that that's taking off.
I know. Clarky, catchphrase.
It's going on our merch. It's definitely going on our merch.
I love it. He talked about how unhappy Sabrina was in her marriage, especially since they had opened it up in 2008.
Did she look like this?
No, she didn't look like that, but that's how I remember her. I remember that so distinctly. I remember watching that on Rage, where it would have all those songs. And that seemed, I think she was Italian, Sabrina, or she was Dutch or something European. Yeah. And it seemed very random and not in keeping with anything else of that era. It was just like, oh, what is that Eurotrash that would come up as part of, you know, when you're watching Rage? You used to watch Rage, didn't you, Schmitty?
I did, but I was just thinking about our Eurotrash experiences.
Oh, is that why you looked affronted then? Because we had our very own Eurotrash.
But we love Eurotrash.
Oh, I'm totally Eurotrash. But I think that was probably about 1988 or 89 or something.
That was early days.
Had that song, and I didn't know who my Eurotrash self was at that point.
No. I still go back to that Satisfaction one, you know, with the girls on the
oh yes, the power tools.
I can't remember the girls on the power tools covered in baby oil. It's the most over-sexualized Eurotrash thing I've ever seen. It's grouch. You'll love it.
Very good.
I keep saying somehow one day in my professional career I'd like to use it somehow in an ad. Sorry, Paul. We're just talking about other Eurotrash, which is
that like Satisfaction?
Yes, that's the one. They're all going.
And their birds are going like this.
Yes, another one.
Go on, Carla. Good chat.
Where were we? So anyway, so basically she's suggesting to him that it's Rob's influence and she's unhappy in this marriage, and she's not the one who's led it to be open. She's just going along with it, and she's very unhappy. And I think she's obviously helping to manipulate the situation with Jonathan by saying, oh gosh, you know, I can't believe this is happening to me. He, on the other hand, having grown up in a very conservative household, totally disapproved of this lifestyle, or so he says. Because remember, he really wanted to be part of the Wolfpack, which I always found a bit suspicious. Jonathan disapproved of this lifestyle, and he said this disgust of Rob really started to grow within him.
His disgust for Rob.
Yes.
Because he was pimping out Sabrina. He was sampling Sabrina.
Kind of. And again, Deirdre Chambers, what a coincidence. It was around this time that he and Sabrina had made a joke about offing Rob. But that's all it was. It was just a joke. But over time, they started to talk more seriously about their plans to marry afterwards. And there could only be an afterwards if there was a death, because remember, divorce was not an option for Sabrina.
That's right.
Not for God. No, but so he's from such a conservative background that he's okay picking up a married woman he's sampling her wares in Costco aisle 13 kind of thing.
Magic pussy.
But also dumbass, like
totally. Because remember, he had to ring up the friends. He had to speak to Rob. He had to come clean early and apologize because he'd sinned and he'd done all this bad stuff, i.e. shagged his wife.
I come back to the start of this with the religious homeschooling parents. If you're going to keep your kid that sheltered and then let him loose on the world, it's not going to end well.
No.
I mean, he's a bit of a victim of our magic pussy lady. When she's not writhing around with the Wolfpack. Sorry. Go
Now,
on.
this hadn't come out before, but on the stand, Jonathan says that he and Sabrina had actually planned to kill Rob first, so prior to the shooting, back in April of 2014. He was actually shot in August, remember? But this is taking us back to April.
Right.
And they decided that they would poison him. So to test how much arsenic they would need, this is awful, but Jonathan, our good, devout Christian,
Killed a
actually
dog?
Did he
first
taste
used it
it,
on
or
a
did he give it
neighbourhood
to someone
dog.
else?
Killed a dog. I was going to say
He
killed
killed a dog, yeah.
Robert Dursted it.
He supposedly felt horrible about killing the dog. Not so horrible it wouldn't stop him
I
going.
love how
crazy.
these people who are so pure of heart just go and do these horrible things
I know,
because
right?
otherwise people will judge me. Like,
Yeah,
what?
don't want to get divorced or go and kill a dog.
As long as
Yeah.
I feel
Oh.
bad about it and I say I'm sorry and I mean it, it's fine.
But when
Well,
the
I'll ask
time
for God's
came,
forgiveness and don't wrong me or I'll kill you.
I hadn't thought of this before, but they're saying here that she made the banana pudding and she put the arsenic in it and she had it in their fridge and then she got cold feet. And I think she probably got cold feet because it would have come straight back to her that time, wouldn't it?
Of course
Anyway,
it would.
so she called Rob and said, oh, the banana's gone off. I mean, isn't that what banana pudding is? Isn't it like off bananas or old
Yeah,
bananas?
correct.
They didn't go through with that. So that he says that had happened, but that had never come up until he was on the stand. So he was saying, look, actually, we'd thought about doing it once before and had gone through these moves.
Clearly
to
at
do that.
homeschooling at Jonathan's house, they didn't teach him the lifestyle of a banana.
Where do you get arsenic from?
I
Okay, that
read
comes
somewhere, or I watched
something,
it on- I think you got
apple
it online,
seeds or
maybe?
something. But
Online?
where do you get it? You buy it online.
I don't know.
Probably.
Google.
I have a friend
Yeah,
who
Get it on
is,
the Google.
I have a friend who's part of the federal police, and she will tell you, no, you don't Google that. Do not
No.
Google that.
I would 100% do it because there's no way I'm ever going to use it, but I just want to see what
Well,
happens.
Also, I think you probably could get away with it a little bit more from a farming perspective.
Just look up what is
Oh, no,
arsenic.
you can't.
No, so we
There's-
can get it. from.
Arsenic is not a farming practice. It's not a commonly
I'm
used
sure it's
item in
not.
farming practice.
What? Not for the rabbits? You don't want to kill the rabbits and
Yeah.
the foxes?
When the feds turn up, I'll go, oh no, I just Googled it for the sheep.
I just wondered how you get your hands on it. Because surely even that's got a trail around it.
I'm just going to send Tony a quick text saying Smitty's asking where you get arsenic
I'm not-
from.
I'm
she
not
knows she
getting
can't Google it.
I can't Google it. I'm
I didn't say you're getting it. I said you're asking.
not trying to get it. So this is 2014. Yeah, no, there'd still be a trail, right? If they ordered it online, that
Oh, totally.
someone bought it. Yeah. Anyway, as you say, they
Just
didn't
go
use
to
it. Yeah.
www.arsenic.com.au and see what comes up.
Maybe you can get it at Costco.
Probably. Isn't it?
Sample.
It would be very helpful with her contacts there. Jonathan said that they didn't sort of go through with it. So then they didn't go through with it. And I really do think it was because Sabrina was the one that said, it would come back to be traced to them. But I think them
Her.
and she, yeah.
100%
Because
her. Yeah.
absolutely. So they started to make another plan. The other plan was to burn Rob alive in his car, but it fell through too.
Oh my God. How do you go
Good
from
people.
I'll poison him to burning him alive in his car? Oh
Yeah,
my God.
I
So we'll
know.
just
That was
shoot
where
him.
God drew the line.
So finally they
was where
settled
God
just
drew the
on
line.
shooting him at the railway, the rail yard
Bucket.
warehouse.
You know
You
what?
can poison him or you can kill him instantly, but you can't burn him alive. We learnt back in the Middle Ages that burning people alive is not okay.
What's the expression when you talk about the simplest solution is usually the
Oh,
one?
look, we'll just shoot him. I think that's
Yeah,
where they got to. This
it's-
is just too hard. We'll just shoot him down at work. Oh, God. So they have a text here that days before the murder, Sabrina texts Jonathan. This is her text. I feel God's purpose and strength working in my life and in our relationship. I love you, Jonathan. Sabrina had given Jonathan Rob's work schedule. He had also said that Sabrina had given him detailed directions to the railroad warehouse and a description of the shop's layout. I like this. Jonathan said that he had done recon work.
By the way-
work in advance.
Occam's razor is what I was searching for there. Yeah.
Oh. I
That's
didn't
where
know
the
what that
simplest
As in-
answer usually is the one. Oh, yeah, shoot.
As
over
in
the head.
Wacom Phoenix?
Yeah, it's in Walking Phoenix. That's it.
Okay, good.
In prep for the murder, he had changed his motorcycle's look, adding flashing in a different color to the gas tank, exhaust pipes, and rear fender. And then, of course, he had that change of costume, as we said before. He wore long sleeve, oversized baggy pants and a face mask to make him look like an elderly man on the way to the shooting before he got into his second outfit.
Kaiser Sose.
Yes. When he first saw Rob, so when he's approaching him, about to shoot him, he did say he had second thoughts. So he prayed to God for guidance. He stopped and prayed.
And God said, kill that motherfucker.
He said, and this is a quote, obviously, there was some apprehension in senselessly taking someone's life.
But not if God says it's okay.
Not enough, though.
Jonathan, this is God. Kill that motherfucker.
When he walked up to the warehouse, Jonathan said he walked with a fake limp to throw off anyone who would watch the security camera that he couldn't avoid.
Genius.
This is where it gets very, very, very
So
weird.
he was Limpy Joe.
Yeah, he was Limpy Joe.
Yes.
But there was actually somebody who had a limp in town. So
There was another Limpy Joe.
there was a real Limpy Joe. So the
what
other
are
poor
the
Limpy Joe had
chances?
nothing to do with it.
Deirdre Chambers. What a coincidence.
Yes. And I hadn't covered this earlier, but they did know.
What
they
a
thought
premeditated murder.
that in the bungled burglary, it hadn't been broken into. And that's because he knew Jonathan. So he says he'd walked up to Rob and he talked to him for a minute until Rob turned his back. Jonathan reached into his backpack for the gun, but the silencer had gotten stuck on the inside of the bag. So he just had to shoot through the bag. So he shot him through his backpack. Oh, he fell seemingly mortally wounded. So that was when Jonathan went about making it look like a burglary. But when he walked past him to leave, he thought, I better make sure he's dead. So he shot him a second time in the head to make sure that he was dead.
It's interesting when you said earlier that there were two gunshot wounds to Rob.
Yes.
I didn't ask you where they were because I wasn't sure if you'd know whether it was head or something.
One was in his chest and the second one was in his head. That was when he was on the ground, just to make sure that he was gone. Good.
Yeah, the shot in the head
he
is
went and stole a laptop.
yes,
Correct.
then he did.
Messed up the filing cabinet.
I was
Yes.
just going to say the shot to the head and other parts of the body often is indicative of a hitman, but it makes sense if he went back to him afterwards and shot him.
Yeah.
Or also a murder.
Oh, hitmen are murderers first and foremost.
Yes, but also murdered people often have shots to the head. God, when he prayed to God, God said, you could shoot him in the chest. It'll be an easier shot, but you may need to finish him off with one to the head. And he said, thanks, God. I appreciate it.
God is good because God is gives you good very clear directions before you're about to go and murder somebody. Yes.
Yes. Well, you need that. Like, God, should I or should I not murder? I'm not sure whether he said yes or no, but maybe he just said, if you do, here's what I'd do. He may not have actually given you permission.
I'll tell you what I'd do. Given the same set of circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd just smote him.
This is still.
I just smote him. I just,
Yes.
wipe him out, obliterate him, because I'm God. I don't need to worry about shooting. I just bang, gone.
I'd start with a plague upon him and his loved ones, but I feel like this is a little bit too much. I don't micromanage this finally, so I can't actually tell you.
I just need to delegate. I need to hand you down to someone else, another department.
I'll just give you some non-specific advice. If you need something more specific, pray to me on Monday because Sundays are really busy for me.
I don't do literal. Okay.
Well,
so
if we're going to take it from your view, Paul, which is that God doesn't exist, we all know God didn't actually answer this guy. He heard whatever was in his head. Magic pussy lady was in his head. Yeah.
he says that as
elsewhere.
soon as he got home, this is what he said, but she didn't say this. He said as soon as he got home, he called Sabrina and told her it was done since he had left his phone at home so it wouldn't be traced to the scene. He told her everything was about to change. Soon Rob would be nothing but a distant memory and they would be married. When asked why they had chosen, I like this, that time to kill Rob, Jonathan had answered, Sabrina said the Wolfpack had planned their annual river trip and she just couldn't bear to go on it this year. And since there was no way Rob would let her get out of going, he had to be gone by then. So they had a deadline to work to. They couldn't go to the river trip where she would be expected to participate in consensual sex with their
couldn't she
friends.
just tell them she was bleeding and didn't want to have sex? I mean, come on. There are other ways to avoid having sex than murdering your husband.
Schmitty, this is the Wolfpack. You don't get
They're
determined,
irresistible.
that you'll do it whether you're bleeding or not. It's the Wolfpack.
They're horn bags.
They're animals.
They are hornbags, but that's
They're
the
total
point.
hornbags. The Wolfpack are up for it.
Oh, they're all, yeah, okay. All right. She's
Just
probably got,
just
TMJ
on that,
or
so-
something and can't give it all this colour.
I,
Sorry.
I
Little
think,
blowjob mouth joke going on there. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a good one. Excellent use of the tongue. I think that Sabrina is very good with delegating tasks because she gives specific information and she puts times around it as well. So, don't just do this whenever you feel like.
No.
But I
She's
need
good,
it done
man. I
by
Can't do the
now.
river trip.
Yeah.
She's a good manager.
Exactly.
She should have been promoted
Yeah.
at Costco beyond sample girl.
Well, if she wasn't stuck as sampler girl who should have been sampling chicken but instead sampled oysters, she might have been a whole lot more promotable.
She's got good foresight, hasn't she? She does seem to be able to look ahead and sort of plan for whatever outcome will come as a result of what she's setting up.
She's a
And,
planner.
Rob said it was inevitable. He said, Rob needed to die for Sabrina and I to move forward with our relationship. So that was why it was a done deal in his head. So that was his testimony.
And can we just, did he ever revisit that at any point and go, I know I thought that was the case, but actually our relationship didn't move very far forward once I'd done that?
No, I don't think he does.
I feel like that's the lesson for every bloke who gets magic pussy, that, you think this is going to happen, but once it does happen, the clam shuts and there is no more magic pussy and things don't get better.
I'm sorry, the clam shuts?
Yes, that was very visual. I like that. The bearded
I've
clam.
heard that before in relation to
The bearded clam, Schmitty.
Australians who go and sleep with women in Thailand.
I think you've got it wrong. I think it's actually the bearded.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I said. It is the bearded clam.
Or it's a Brazilian.
Oh, right. So that would
Brazilian
be
clams are a little less, you can't tickle their wires as well.
Okay,
Good
so
chat.
that was Jonathan's testimony. And now for Sabrina, having been arrested for a second time. But she never changed her story. So from the trial, she always swore that she had no idea that Jonathan had killed Rob or had planned to do so beforehand. The wiretaps had corroborated this since they had never spoken of Rob's murder or of Jonathan's involvement. And then what becomes quite interesting is her defense attorney, he tries to paint a totally different picture of Sabrina, obviously. And he argued that Jonathan was lying to save himself jail time and that with no evidence of Sabrina's involvement, she should be acquitted. They said, yes, she'd been having an affair, but she'd been honest about that and she had never lied, but that was all that she was guilty of doing. Terry told the jury that Jonathan was a gifted manipulator who preyed on the hearts of older women. And he showed that while Jonathan was with Sabrina...
Hang on. Sorry, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
Preyed on the hearts of old women.
Oh,
Yes,
women.
He cut
women
them
is
out.
plural.
He cut them out and then he prayed over them. He prayed on them. Sorry.
Yes, because he's religious.
Yes, I like that.
Sorry, I
Removed them
misheard.
first. Yeah.
They actually brought another witness forward who was another woman that he'd been seeing, and she didn't look dissimilar to Sabrina. She was also probably 10, 12 years older than him, an attractive blonde, and he had, obviously the defense attorney had put her forward, but she said the same thing, that, it was his love of God and that he was such a charming and intelligent young man that made her feel so special.
He was a cougar hunter, is all I'm hearing here.
Yeah.
He knew
it?
He knew that Poontang came easy.
So her pussy wasn't magic; it was the magic penis this time around.
I think
Yes.
this is the story we're hearing now. That's right.
A magic younger one, I think.
The
So they
magic
showed a pattern
snake.
of how he manipulated. Yes, he manipulated the older women in his life to give him what he wanted, and he used his charm, the love of God, to disarm them because they thought that they were safe with him, as opposed to their husbands or partners who had them in open marriages and had them writhing around with the Wolfpack. Not that the other woman was from the Wolfpack, but that these people had sort of these quite.
Explain to me then, if he's so manipulative, why he killed someone.
Yeah, they
'Cause-
didn't get to that point.
Of course they didn't, because that's what the prosecution's
because
job
he's
was supposed to be.
But Terry was saying, my old mate Terry says that Jonathan Hearn gave Sabrina a feeling of just being wanted for herself, not for some kind of sex toy. that her husband passed around. But this is interesting. When called to the stand, Kelly, do we remember Kelly? Kelly and Jace
Yes,
were the original
do.
Wolfpack couple
Kelly
who
was
they were best friends
happy
with.
to say that Sabrina did it. Jason
Totally.
was not.
Kelly totally turned.
Because Kelly had the real magic pussy in this book.
Maybe.
I have a question though. Is there anything that suggests that she really was put in a position where she had to put out and she was uncomfortable with it, apart from her own testimony?
I don't believe so, because in some of the testimony that I actually saw when Kelly was speaking, she said that she and Sabrina would often hook up before they'd all hook up with their husbands. So she was quite happy to be with Kelly before the husbands then got involved. It was all very consensual, I think. I don't think it was just, oh, you need to go and have sex with Jason or whoever else.
Hornbags, yep. Just in case there was any evidence that she actually was a victim. Just checking.
Correct. Because we don't like to victim blame, do we?
No, we don't.
No.
Well, Carla and you do.
I do.
I feel like you do most.
Not me.
So
Anyway,
while
moving
Kelly's
on.
still on the stand, Terry accuses Kelly of being in love with Rob and jealous of Sabrina, and that she was just, trying to get back at her friend. Kelly admitted that she had very real feelings to Rob and didn't like Sabrina all that much, but she then tried to blame the open marriage on Sabrina, saying it was actually all her idea and it wasn't Rob's, which obviously goes totally against what Jonathan had used in his testimony.
Yeah, but
So
hard
she's
to
saying,
believe
look,
her because she had the hots for Rob.
I agree.
So,
I think all of the Wolfpack, I wouldn't believe any of them. I think they were all just in it for what they could get. And then when it turned sour, yes.
They're all a bunch of cocksuckers. Quite
they're all a bunch
Muriel.
of suckers or something.
Yes.
Okay, so the other side of the story is actually Sabrina on the stand. When she took the stand, her own defense, she openly talked about her marriage and her regrets. She told the jury that her husband had been addicted to porn. Sabrina had said she felt guilty about the lifestyle. It didn't align with her religious views.
But murder, on the other hand,
not a problem.
100% okay.
We opened our marriage bed and it changed the dynamic of our sacred bond.
When she says we opened our marriage bed,
yeah,
the opening just happened to be at Costco while she was sampling her wares to somebody who wasn't part of the Wolfpack.
Correct. So she even went outside the Wolfpack to get her fix.
Yeah, she's just a manipulative pussy, I'm going to go with. Can we have that term as well?
I suspect that part of this is correct in the sense that she felt so not conflicted, because I actually think she did all of that quite willingly. But if you do feel like some guilt over your religious beliefs and the way you're behaving out with the Wolfpack, she says she thought he was wholesome and spiritually focused, which was of a huge appeal to her. Jonathan would sit and pray with her. It helped her feel closer to God. It was everything she needed at first. So I think
as well as his phone number and
his and the fact that he was a hot fireman who was 12 years younger than her.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, she could have gone to the local church, couldn't she, and spoken to the pastor or the priest and had some spiritual guidance, but she chose spiritual guidance of another type. She does turn on Jonathan. She says, eventually, in the end, Jonathan started using her faith against her. She said that Jonathan tried to make her feel like she had to leave Rob to have a spiritual life, that the only way for her was to leave him. Sabrina said she started to feel controlled all over again, just in a different way than with her husband. Poor Sabrina.
So nice when people of faith turn on each other. Shocking.
Goodness me. She said that she did fantasize about a life with Jonathan, but that was all it ever was. She said she could never actually leave Rob. He was her children's father and she loved him. She denied both attempts on Rob's life. So she said that the arsenic situation had never happened. She just adamantly swears that Jonathan had never told her anything about the shooting beforehand or after. To wind it up, it took a jury only 6 hours to find Sabrina Lemon. Now I can't even say her name. Sabrina Lemon. If I was American, I'd Lemon. Sabrina Lemon. Guilty of first-degree murder, and that was because of Jonathan's testimony. She was sentenced to 25 years to life, and today the 41-year-old is serving her time at a Central California women's facility, and Jonathan is also still in prison, of course.
First-degree murder.
There we go.
So she
got done for first-degree murder conspiracy to murder,
Yeah,
accessory to murder, and solicitation to commit murder.
right.
She was found guilty on those. She was not found guilty on the pudding, the banana pudding attempt. They said that was not guilty.
There's
So
no
they didn't
evidence.
do
You
that.
can't. There's no evidence that even happened. Yeah.
So he's guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and she's first degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, and solicitation to commit murder.
And he got 25 years.
Yes, with the chance of early parole, she's 25 years to life.
But he actually pulled the trigger and murdered the guy.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, right? Does the manipulative one who orchestrates the whole thing get an easier sentence than the one who pulls the trigger?
Clearly not.
I'm not convinced that she's got the sentence she needs.
Too much or too little?
On that then, Paul.
Well, I think so. There's a number of charges she's been found guilty of.
Yes.
But potentially they will both have a 25-year sentence.
So she's to life as well. So she could get to...
No, but potentially, because she might not be. She might just be 25 and he might be 25, and therefore they've had the same sentence. If she gets her earliest, he gets his latest, potentially got the same punishment, and I'm not sure that's correct. And I
Look, that was a
hope
big
that
shock
doesn't
to you. She is appealing her conviction in its entirety, claiming a total lack of evidence.
Yeah. And so if she appeals it and then gets found guilty again, can we make sure that she gets like double? I don't care how much, just a lot longer.
So then, Paul,
Yes.
how would you sentence her in the great legal system that is trial by one?
You know, I got so engrossed in the story. At one point you said, I've been considering my sentence, and I was like, oh, yeah, I need to do that, but I'm still so engrossed, still trying to understand it. So I'm not very clear on my sentence just yet. Could you go first?
Yeah, sure. So mine's still a bit like you. It's, in the early days of consideration, but I actually think there are some other people who've weighed into this or made this situation happen, and that's the Wolfpack. I think the Wolfpack have not been operating in the most above board and sensible and God-fearing manner. Harking back to some other episodes where you, Paul, seem to have a penchant for considering reality TV / game shows as a kind of...
Oh, yes. I'm a
sentence.
Wolfpack member. Get me out of here.
Something where the Wolfpack's all together and Jonathan and Sabrina are thrown into the mix. And, maybe it's like Survivor, I'm a Wolfpack, get me out of here.
On the river trip.
She didn't want to go on the river trip. Maybe that's the sentence, that we have this televised river trip with the Wolfpack, and they have to chase Jonathan and Sabrina down the river. And of course, she's weighed down by her chastity belt because it's time she behaved in such a fashion that suggests that her magic pussy couldn't actually manipulate anyone anymore. And they're chasing her down. And I don't quite know what a wolf pack, but I think a real wolf pack could possibly decide that she might be the weakest link. Oh, I just brought another show in. And there might be some kind of Lord of the Flies, natural justice, piggy type moment with Sabrina and Jonathan. What do you think?
Yes, that could work. It's a hard one, right? Because I'm going to come up with another idea. So I think that the easiest way to get rid of a wolf pack is to get rid of the whole pack. And they're not all as guilty as each other, right?
I was just thinking in that line of thinking, I think within a wolf pack, there's always an alpha male. Isn't that the whole idea?
Yeah, so that was Rob.
That was Rob. And I did have a footnote, which I was going to add, which will come as no surprise to anyone, I'm sure. Sadly, Jason and Kelly got divorced.
Oh, you're shocked.
I guess. But you can't, do you think that marriage could handle the strain?
Oh,
and
you
also,
shocked me.
I also think that the wolf pack is somewhat splintered. So I don't think it was able to handle.
The thing about being the alpha is that you're not the alpha for eternity. You're alpha until someone else challenges you and you can't defend yourself, and then they become the alpha. That's just the way that whole alpha thing works.
Yeah.
In nature, I don't know about in humanity or in Silver Lake, but I feel like given that there's a wolf pack, so what we should do is chain them all together in order of responsibility in this crime, I think Sabrina is probably the one at the very first chain. She might say Rob is, but, Rob's dead, so it doesn't matter. But so let's chain them all together and then push them off the deep end, weigh the first one down really deeply, and maybe some of them will survive, but hopefully the Sabrinas and the Jonathans won't stand a chance. And then, that's what happens if you're a wolf pack. Let it be known to other members of Silver Lake or the rest of the world.
So is your punishment some kind of means to determine the next alpha or to just thin out the weakest of the pack?
No, it's more about if you're going to be a member of a wolf pack, which I'm not a fan of at all, it kind of grosses me out. But if you're going to be a fan of that and you're going to join a wolf pack, understand there are consequences, and you may not be directly linked to them, but because you're part of that pack, there are people there who are doing horrible things. If you choose not to know about that or to not acknowledge your knowledge of that stuff, then maybe you're somewhat guilty too. I don't know how guilty you are, and it depends on the depth of the reservoir at Silver Lake as to how guilty you are, but I'm very happy to push you all off together and just see what happens.
I thought perhaps if I was, and I'm terrible at the trial part, as you all well know, because I'm not very good at that. But the thing that always comes back to me is, what do people really care about the most, or how they are viewed by other people? And for both Sabrina and certainly Jonathan, because they seem to think that they've got this, they're on this sort of sliding scale of what is right in God's eyes and what is not. And, I think for them that forgiveness from God would be what has promoted them to do everything, because they think that they'll be able to sort of get away with it because they ask for forgiveness. So I think that if they were shown to be publicly morally corrupt and not forgiven by the church and or God, and that they would have to live as sort of, or an eternity in sort of still in sin, that would be the harshest sort of reckoning of what they'd done.
Okay, let's go a step further, as Paul often likes to do, and let's just create hell on earth for them. So
yes,
let's pop them somewhere. Like, I recently watched a program where I was looking at the live volcanoes of Hawaii. Perhaps we need to helicopter them into and fence them into the lower lava fields of a Hawaiian volcano, a bit like your reservoir thing, Paul. And they have to subsist where there's no vegetation, just lots of hot ground, smelling the sulfur all day, because that's hell on earth.
No, let's put them in the front of Costco and have everyone judge them. Their peers and their community and people who know that they're sinners. Let's put them right in amongst the people who go, that they care about what they think of. Costco would be their living hell. Sample
so there's
out the front.
There's the really harsh crime, and then there's the Costco crime, and I think it's a really good one to explore, Swanny, because I think certainly Sabrina should be banned from sampling her wares in Costco or in fact anywhere else.
You think perhaps she crossed the line as being a Costco employee?
Well, no, I just think that I don't think it's even Costco related. I just think she likes to sample herself.
Oh, right, got it.
I feel like we put a stop to her sampling. And also Jonathan likes to taste samples, so he should never, ever be allowed to go to Costco and taste samples.
He should have his membership revoked for the rest of his life, 100%.
Yes.
No, I don't want him to not be a member. I want him to not be able to sample. So you can see the stuff, you can see the goods, but you cannot taste them.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to have to commit to the whole lot, or you can't have any.
We talked about the Game of Thrones type walk of shame a few episodes ago.
We did. Yes.
Now, what if they had to do a walk of shame throughout Silver Lakes, like every day?
Yeah.
But instead of just throwing standard rotten food at them, the township threw rotten samples from Costco at them.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yes. No, but I feel like now we're getting into, it's not a game show, clearly, but it's maybe an opportunity for Costco to roll learnings out across all their stores. So here's something we've had happen earlier.
A cautionary tale.
Sabrina's wares, then perhaps you could end up being sampling the fry pan, or, having that walk of shame through aisle number 7. It could be a little bit of worldwide community learning.
Yeah. So she becomes.
It could be the Costco brand book.
Yeah, it's in the Costco brand book. What not to do.
Well, welcome to Costco. We're going to teach you how to sample. We're also going to teach you how not to sample,
Cool.
and we're going to teach you a little bit of percussion.
And what not to sample.
Yeah.
Correct. Does anyone know anyone at Costco that we could perhaps chat to about this, see whether they would go with that?
No, I mean,
I have no contacts at Costco.
I am a Costco member, although I have a horrible feeling my membership's going to be revoked. And I would like to say none of this story has got anything to do with Costco.
Costco.
It's not Costco's fault. Costco has no liability around Sabrina sampling their wares or her own. Just to be clear.
I think we can all agree that it's not Costco's fault.
Oh,
but,
yes, we can totally agree with that.
Would have a role to play in helping the whole community understand, don't be Sabrina offering more than your wares. Just keep it to the stuff on the plate.
The stuff that we're paid to sample, that's right.
Not the MP.
Not
No,
the
not
magic.
the MP.
Exactly right. Yes.
Don't go there.
I know it'll start sparkling underneath the plate and trying to get your attention, but just don't let it.
Oh.
All right. So what is our sentence then? Where do we end up with? So I'm okay with her being part of the, as Carla put it, Costco brand book of what not to do.
A cautionary tale.
I think we've got a couple of different punishments. I'm a big fan of, let's say you go out to the deepest point in
The reservoir.
Silver Lake
Yeah.
and then use Sabrina as the anchor, but also have the whole Wolfpack in terms of most alpha first, least alpha last. And then we just, it's a bit of a, how deep is Silver Lake and, how responsible are all these people? If you want to be part of the Wolfpack in Silver Lake, then we're going to acknowledge your role in this. And if it's 3 meters deep and only 3 people die, that's okay. If
I think that's really fair.
20
Paul.
meters deep and 20 people die, well, don't join the Wolfpack in the first place.
No, and I think that's really fair that the Wolfpack played a significant part. Whether Sabrina was pimped out by her husband or not, everyone went along with it and everyone supported Rob. So if Rob was a coercive and controlling husband, they all thought he was the nicest, greatest guy. Well, that's Sabrina's point. Sabrina's argument. That's what I said. If he was.
If people just could have kept their pants on, it would have been a good idea, I think.
Yeah, I mean, back to your original point, they're a bunch of horn dogs.
Yeah, they are.
Horn bag.
Horn dogs.
Horn bag.
They're horn dogs because they're Wolfpack. They're dogs. All right, so you got to go down the reservoir, get chained up, chucked in, possibly drowned, and those who survive are part of the brand book of what not to do for samplers for Costco in the future.
They can then they can travel the world and tell other Costco employees and members, let me give you a little bit of a story of what happened in Silver Lake.
How dangerous it can be. That's right.
How not to behave.
Costco is committed to never letting this happen again.
And rightly so.
But I also think, to your point earlier, Schmitty, this is trial by wine. And whilst we are maybe getting Costco into the punishment side of things, they have no responsibility here.
None of this has got anything to do with Costco, sorry. And I love Costco. Please don't revoke my membership.
Or else.
Well done, Swanny.
Good job, Carla. Good one.
So I've got an interesting story for next week, and I'm not going to give you any information other than if you do have a pool, please keep it clean.
Okay. Well,
on that note,
I have no idea what that means. So, which is a good thing. So I'm looking forward to the next week, Paul. That sounds brilliant. That was a great episode. Really enjoyed it, Carla. Clarky, as always, you and I and all of the way we think and our values so aligned.
Once again, what's really important is the ability to have different views and yet still come together
and still be friends after 20 something years. If
society could do that more, we would be very, very grateful.
That's right. We are the world. This is how peace happens. That's right.
We are the children.
Love you, girls.
Love you too.
Love you too. Have a great
Miss
week.
you already.
Over and out.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye.
Love you more.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.